Some stories don't begin with thunder, they begin with silence, the kind of silence that sinks into the bones, the kind of silence a mother learns to carry when the very child she raised, fed, protected, and loved turns against her in front of strangers. On that ordinary afternoon, in a room filled with laughter and polished silverware, a single sentence shattered decades of motherhood. "How dare you sit at the same table as my mother-in-law?" Those words didn't come from a stranger. They came from her own daughter. The daughter she sacrificed everything for. The daughter she believed would stand beside her for life. But instead, the daughter chose wealth over wisdom, status over love, and a snobbish mother-in-law over the woman who gave her breath. In that moment, the room fell silent. The mother swallowed the pain, but something inside her cracked. Not anger, not hatred, but awakening, a fierce, unstoppable awakening. Because humiliation can either break a woman, or it can ignite her. And this mother, she chose fire. She chose a path carved from truth, sharpened by dignity, and fueled by the kind of strength only a wounded mother possesses. She wasn't seeking revenge out of spite, she was seeking justice for every tear, every sacrifice, every moment she gave without receiving a single ounce of respect in return. And when the truth finally rose, cold, brutal, undeniable, it didn't just shake the family. It shattered the illusion of power that the mother-in-law thought she owned. This isn't just a story about disrespect, it's a story about a mother reclaiming her throne. Not with violence, but with truth. Not with rage, but with dignity. Not with noise, but with unstoppable power. So sit tight, breathe deep, because from this moment forward, every second of this story will pull you in harder, and by the end, you'll see exactly what happens when a mother who has been silent for too long finally decides, enough. The moment her daughter spat those venomous words, "How dare you sit at the same table as my meal?" the entire room froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks hovered over plates. Even the arrogant mother-in-law, who usually smirked with pride at every display of dominance, blinked in surprise. But for the protagonist, the mother who had spent her entire life giving, sacrificing, and nurturing the very daughter now humiliating her, the world stopped spinning altogether. The sting of those words didn't just cut. They carved deep, hollow wounds through her chest, slicing every tender memory of motherhood into painful fragments. This wasn't just disrespect. This was betrayal in its purest, coldest form. She had raised her daughter single-handedly, feeding her when she was hungry, comforting her through nightmares, pushing through exhaustion to give her a life better than her own. She had endured storms, swallowed insults, and fought battles alone, because motherhood demanded it. And yet here she was, being treated like an outsider in her own child's life. Like an embarrassment. Like someone unworthy of sitting at a table with people who had never lifted a finger for her daughter. Her daughter's voice was sharp, dripping with entitlement shaped by years of influence from a wealthy, condescending mother-in-law who believed status determined humanity. The daughter had absorbed that poison, believing that money equaled dignity, that class equaled respect, and that her own mother, who had none of those things, was disposable. That single outburst revealed a truth the protagonist had refused to see for too long. Her daughter had allowed arrogance to rot her heart. But the mother didn't lash out. She didn't defend herself. She didn't cry though her bones ached with grief. She stood there, hearing guests whisper, seeing discomfort spread across faces, feeling humiliation burn beneath her skin. But instead of reacting, she simply sat there in silence. A silence so heavy and calm it felt almost unnatural, because sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest storms inside them. And this mother, she was done being walked over. In that moment, she realized something life-altering. The problem wasn't just her daughter's behavior. It was the years of sacrifice she had offered without boundaries, the patience she had stretched until it strangled her, the forgiveness she had handed out like cheap candy to people who never deserved it. She had trained her daughter to believe disrespect was allowed. She had taught her Mile that cruelty had no consequences, and now she was paying the price for her own endless kindness. But humiliation has a strange way of lighting fires inside the hearts of the quiet. As she looked at her daughter, her face twisted with embarrassment that her mother dared to exist in front of wealthy in-laws. Something inside the mother hardened. Something ancient, something fierce, because a mother's love may be endless, but a mother's patience is not. This moment became the spark, the catalyst, the ignition of a silent vow: no more. No more being treated like a burden. No more being spoken to like a servant. No more swallowing pain to keep the peace. No more shrinking so others could feel taller. This was the moment she decided not to fight with tears, not with yelling, not with pleas, but with dignity, intelligence, and a revenge so elegantly crafted that those who humiliated her would one day regret underestimating the woman they believed was weak. And silently, beneath the surface of humiliation, a storm began to rise. A mother's storm, a storm no one saw coming, a storm no one could escape. The disrespectful outburst didn't break her. It awakened her. The mother-in-law was the kind of woman who walked into a room and demanded respect without ever earning an ounce of it. Her arrogance didn't speak, it screamed. From the moment she laid eyes on her son's wife's mother, she decided this gentle woman wasn't worthy. Not of her table, her air, or even her attention. She dripped condescension with every word she spoke, turning simple dinners into silent battles of superiority. And what made her venom truly dangerous was her talent for manipulation. She didn't shout or insult directly. No, her cruelty was far more calculated. She whispered poison into her daughter-in-law's ear, slowly convincing her that her own mother was an embarrassment, a burden, a stain on the elegant image she wanted to project. She'd raise an eyebrow, smirk slightly, and say things like, "You're so refined. But your mother, she doesn't really fit the picture, does she?" And the daughter, desperate for approval, swallowed every toxic seed. The Mile turned family gatherings into performance stages, positioning herself at the center like a queen on a throne while ensuring the protagonist remained on the sidelines, always one step behind, always serving, always excluded. She controlled everything: meals, guest lists, seating, decisions, even conversations. She treated the mother as if she were invisible unless she needed someone to blame or belittle. When the daughter snapped that day, ordering her own mother not to sit at the same table, the Mile's smile said everything. She had orchestrated this moment. It was her victory. She loved watching families fracture under her influence. It made her feel powerful, relevant, irreplaceable. But underneath her polished exterior lived deep insecurity, a lifelong hunger for dominance, recognition, and control. She couldn't stand the thought that someone else's mother, someone humble and kind, might be loved more, respected more, or valued more. So she chipped away at the daughter's loyalty, piece by piece, replacing love with snobbery and gratitude with entitlement. She branded herself as the superior woman, the one with wealth, connections, elegance. And in doing so, she crafted a household atmosphere thick with tension, fear, and silent competition. What made her manipulation even more vicious was how she hid behind politeness, always playing the innocent victim while igniting conflict behind closed doors. She thrived on the daughter's growing disrespect, feeding it like a fire that warmed her cold, controlling heart. But what she didn't know was that the quiet mother she underestimated was watching, analyzing, learning. She wasn't weak. She was patient. She understood that revenge wasn't about shouting or fighting back immediately. It was about timing. It was about watching the enemy dig their own grave, one arrogant insult at a time. The mother-in-law believed she held all the power, but she had no idea that the silent woman she mocked was preparing to reclaim everything she had been denied: respect, dignity, and her daughter's true loyalty. And when the truth finally came out, the Mile would discover that the woman she dismissed as beneath her was the one who would bring her pride crashing to the ground. The mother didn't cry when her daughter humiliated her. She didn't scream, argue, or defend herself. not because she was weak, but because she had lived a lifetime learning how to swallow pain with grace. She had worked 2 jobs to raise this daughter, sacrificed her own happiness, and endured loneliness so her child would never feel it. She skipped meals so her daughter could eat, skipped dreams so her daughter could chase hers. Yet here she stood, treated like a stranger, like a servant, like someone unworthy of sitting at the same table as a woman who had never lifted a finger for her daughter's well-being. The pain cut deeper than words could describe. It wasn't the humiliation itself. It was the realization that somewhere along the way, her daughter had unlearned gratitude, unlearned love, unlearned who her real family was. But pain, when endured long enough, sharpens itself into something powerful: clarity. As the mother sat quietly in the corner, pushing away her hurt, something inside her shifted. She replayed every moment she had been mocked, excluded, and treated like she didn't belong, and she finally understood. She had allowed herself to be the doormat for far too long. The daughter's behavior didn't happen overnight. It was a slow evolution of entitlement nurtured by a manipulative Amiel and enabled by the mother's silence. And that silence was about to end. The mother began observing her daughter and Miel not with sadness, but strategy. She noticed the cracks, the arguments between them, the lies the Miel used to maintain control, the financial strain they were hiding, the tensions no one else saw. She noticed how fragile their so-called perfect image really was. She saw the desperation beneath the Miel's arrogance, the insecurity behind her fake superiority, the fear that someone, anyone, would see through her facade. And she saw her daughter's growing dissatisfaction, trapped between wanting approval and wanting peace. The mother didn't lash out. She didn't threaten. Instead, she waited for the precise moment when truth would strike harder than any insult ever could. She began gently exposing facts, revealing inconsistencies, bringing to light the Amiel's manipulations with undeniable evidence. She calmly confronted moments of disrespect in public settings, turning the tables with elegance and intelligence. She held her dignity like armor, showing everyone, including her daughter, what true strength looked like. And when the final blow landed, when the daughter realized how deeply she had hurt the very woman who had given her everything, the mother didn't need revenge through cruelty. Her revenge was truth. Her revenge was her daughter's awakening. Her revenge was watching the Miel lose influence, lose control, lose her throne. The mother reclaimed her place not through anger, but through power, real, unshakable, earned power. And for the first time, the daughter saw her mother not as someone beneath the table, but as the strongest person in the room. This was not just revenge. This was rebirth. The moment she began peeling back the polite layers of her daughter's wealthy mother-in-law, she realized she wasn't dealing with a difficult woman. She was dealing with a master manipulator, a cold strategist wrapped in diamonds and false smiles. What looked like elegance was nothing but a mask hiding schemes sharp enough to tear a family apart. The protagonist began to see the patterns she once ignored. The exaggerated sweetness in public, the condescending tone in private, the carefully timed comments meant to sow doubt, insecurity, and distance between a mother and her own child. At first, she doubted herself, wondering if she was overreacting or misreading situations. But the truth doesn't hide forever. One small clue after another began connecting into a chilling picture. Financial papers didn't add up. Strange transfers appeared in her daughter's name. Whispers between the Amiel and her daughter suddenly fell into place. Her daughter's growing disrespect. The Amiel's smirks every time the protagonist was belittled. The accidental, overheard conversations about family inheritance and property. It all pointed in one direction: the Amiel wanted her gone, erased, excluded, pushed completely out of her daughter's life so she could control everything. Then she found the real proof. Hidden messages. Manipulated bank documents. Conversations secretly recorded by someone else in the family who had also seen the truth, but was too afraid to speak. The Amiel had been plotting for years. Whispering poison into her daughter's ear, convincing her that her own mother was worthless, embarrassing, and beneath their new high-status lifestyle, she created fake stories, exaggerated small mistakes, and twisted harmless moments into evidence to make the daughter turn against the woman who raised her. And it worked. Until now. The protagonist realized that the disrespect she endured wasn't random. It was engineered. The Evil wanted control over her son's marriage. And the best way to do that was by isolating the daughter from anyone who could influence her, especially her mother. The protagonist saw the cruel brilliance behind every move. The Mimiel made herself look like the generous, sophisticated savior while painting the mother as the uneducated burden. Friends and relatives were fed lies. Social reputation was manipulated. Every insult the daughter threw had been planted by the Mimiel like a seed, nurtured with manipulation and watered with arrogance. And even more disturbing, there were signs the Mimiel was scheming to get access to money that didn't belong to her, quietly pulling strings behind financial accounts, pushing for signatures, and guiding her daughter into decisions that would benefit only one person, herself. The mother realized she was not just dealing with disrespect. She was dealing with an enemy who smiled in her face while planning her downfall. And that was the moment something powerful awakened inside her. Not rage, but clarity. The fog lifted. The illusions shattered. She saw exactly who the Mimiel was, a puppeteer pulling threads, a poisonous serpent hiding behind etiquette, a woman used to crushing anyone who stood between her and control. And for the first time, the protagonist felt her pain shift into purpose. If the Mimiel wanted a war, she had chosen the wrong mother. Because a mother who has been humiliated, disrespected, and underestimated becomes something unstoppable when she finally sees the truth. She becomes storm. She becomes justice. But the mother didn't strike back with rage, noise, or chaos. She chose silence, calculation, and timing like a true storm waiting behind a calm sky. She walked through the days with steady steps, watching the Mimiel spin her webs of poison with pride, watching her daughter bow at her feet like a puppet, pulled by invisible strings. But what the Mimiel never realized was that the quiet mother she looked down on had finally stopped hurting and had begun planning. She started documenting every insult, every manipulation, every instance where the Mimiel deliberately twisted her daughter against her. She collected messages, bank statements, phone recordings, gifts that were meant to bribe, and documents the Mimiel never thought anyone would see. And while everyone thought the mother was defeated, she was actually learning the enemy, understanding her patterns, her weaknesses, her secrets. The moment the Mimiel tried to interfere in the marriage again by suggesting divorce, claiming the mother was a curse in their home, the mother struck her first silent blow. She revealed the Mimiel's fraudulent financial activities to the right people. Anonymous tips, carefully timed emails, copies sent to those whose opinions the Mimiel worshipped. And as the Mimiel's pristine reputation began to crack in the public eye, the mother prepared for the final blow. At the next big family gathering, where the Mimiel expected all eyes to praise her, the mother stood up, placed the evidence on the table, and tore down the empire of lies brick by brick. She exposed the emotional manipulation, the money taken from her daughter's savings, the private investigator hired to push her out of her own daughter's life, the schemes designed to break the marriage so the Mimiel could maintain full control. She didn't scream. She didn't need to. The truth was loud enough. The guests gasped, the relatives whispered, the room spun with shock, and the Mimiel, for the first time in her life, had no words. Her pride collapsed, her control shattered, and her daughter stared at her with disbelief and shame. The mother walked away not with anger but with power, proving that the quiet ones, when pushed long enough, deliver the deadliest justice. The daughter's world erupted the moment the truth surfaced. She stood frozen between the mother she had humiliated and the mother-in-law she had worshipped, realizing she had betrayed the wrong woman. Her marriage trembled as her husband confronted his own mother's manipulation, the lies she fed them both, and the poisonous pride that poisoned their family. Friends who had once admired the Mimel turned away, ashamed of ever believing her polished mask. The daughter felt the sting of consequences, not because her mother wanted vengeance on her, but because truth has a way of shaking the ground beneath those who stand on the wrong side. The daughter tried to apologize, to explain, to rewind the moment she told her own mother she wasn't worthy of sitting at the same table. But apologies cannot erase years of disrespect, and the mother, stronger than she had ever been, did not fold or rush to soothe her. She simply said, "Respect is earned, not demanded." Those words hit harder than any punishment. The daughter realized she had allowed pride, wealth, and influence to blind her to the love of the only woman who had ever sacrificed for her. Meanwhile, the Mimiel's downfall was complete, facing legal consequences for her financial fraud, social humiliation for her manipulations, and isolation from the very circles she once dominated. Her throne crumbled, and with it, her power. The mother walked away with her head held high, reclaiming not only her dignity but her voice. One she had silenced for too long. She rebuilt her life, independent and strong, inspiring those around her with her resilience and grace. And while the daughter slowly began to earn back trust, the mother remained firm, knowing that self-respect is the strongest armor a woman can ever wear. Her final victory wasn't revenge, it was freedom. It was respect. It was the world finally seeing her worth. And in that moment, one truth stood unshakable: no one humiliates a mother and escapes the storm she can rise into. In the end, the truth did not whisper, it roared. The lies that once floated silently through that home were finally dragged into the light, stripped of their disguise, and crushed beneath the weight of undeniable proof. The mother, who had walked in quietly carrying years of humiliation, now stood tall, her voice steady, her dignity restored, her heart stronger than ever. The mother-in-law's schemes shattered like fragile glass the moment her manipulation was exposed. Her carefully built empire of control, her fake respect, her poisonous whispers, her financial traps, collapsed in front of everyone she once tried to impress. She was no longer the untouchable queen of the room. She was a villain revealed, a storm finally facing the thunder she created. And the daughter, the one who once shouted at her own mother, blinded by pride and influence, was forced to look into the mirror of truth. She saw not a powerful wife or sophisticated woman, but someone who almost destroyed the one person who loved her endlessly. Her knees shook, her voice cracked, and shame lit her face as she realized how deeply she had wounded the hands that raised her. But the mother did not celebrate her daughter's tears. Revenge wasn't about cruelty. It was about awakening. It was about reclaiming respect. It was about teaching a lesson that would echo for a lifetime. The daughter's marriage trembled as the truth spilled out. The husband stood stunned as he realized his mother's interference, her manipulation, her attempts to break the family for her own pride. Suddenly, the daughter understood exactly who had been poisoning her mind, and who had always stood beside her, even in silence. When the storm finally settled, only one figure remained truly unshaken: the mother. She walked out of that home with her dignity blazing like fire, with her self-worth shining brighter than every insult thrown at her. She didn't leave as a victim. She left as a victor. She didn't leave broken. She left reborn. And for the first time in years, everyone finally saw her for who she truly was: the backbone, the strength, the woman who refused to be erased. And that is the power of a mother. She may be silent, she may bend, she may endure, but she never breaks. And when she rises, every injustice that tried to bury her is forced to bow. This story isn't just revenge. It's a reminder, a warning, a promise. Never underestimate a mother's heart. Never mistake her kindness for weakness. And never forget, when a mother is pushed to her limit, she becomes the storm no one can outrun.